Hello and welcome to PMQs on Labour Social. Let's get into it, shall we? Heading over to the House of Commons now. Let's get going.
Question one, please.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the thoughts of the whole House are with the people of Hainault in East London following yesterday's appalling attack. Such violence has no place on our streets. It's absolutely heartbreaking. That a teenage boy has died, and I can't imagine what his family are going through. And we send them our heartfelt condolences and offer our very best wishes to all those injured. And I'd just like to reiterate my thanks to the police and other emergency first responders for embodying the highest standards of public service under such awful circumstances. And I know that our thoughts are also with those injured this morning in an attack at a school in Sheffield. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties in this House. I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We already know that more than 1 in 5 teenagers are vaping, with some experts describing this as an epidemic. And yesterday, new research suggested that teenagers who vape could be at risk of exposure to toxic metals, potentially harming brain or organ development. I agree with the Prime Minister in his wish to reduce the harms caused by smoking and vaping with the Tobacco and Vapes Bill. Will he agree with me that permitting football strips to be sponsored by vaping companies sends entirely the wrong message to young people, and that it's now time to ban vape companies advertising on sports strips?
100% agree with that.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable lady for her question? Obviously, your decisions about
weekly clown show,
teams, but I do agree with her that it is important we do everything we can to tackle the scourge of
so you're not going to do anything about
which is why I'm glad that she supports our bill, which will clamp down on the marketing, availability of flavours, point of sale practices, but also improving funding for trading standards to clamp down on those
being funded by
vapes illegally to children.
Dr. Lisa Cameron.
Many thanks, Mr. Speaker. My husband is a veteran, and the defence of the country is the government's first duty to protect people across the United Kingdom. So can the Prime Minister reassure the House that he has a plan in place to back our world-leading armed services? And does he know why the party opposite refused to back his plan?
Because of the opposition, and it's a shit idea.
Can I start by paying tribute to my honourable friend's husband and all our veterans for their service to our country. And she's right, in the most uncertain time since the Cold War, that it's right that we build our security, protecting our values, our interests, and indeed our nation. That's why this government has taken the step to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, making us the biggest spender in Europe under
smallest
NATO.
army since
and when the
Elizabeth I.
Labour leader stands up, I hope that he stops dithering, does the right thing, and confirms that he will back our plan to increase defence spending.
It doesn't have to. You got a majority, dickhead. You don't need his support.
Mr. Speaker, I join with the Prime Minister in his words about yesterday's awful events at Hainault. I'm sure the whole House will want to commend the first responders and send our deepest condolences to the family of the 14-year-old boy who was murdered. And I join with the Prime Minister in his remarks about the attack in the school in Sheffield as well. I know everyone in this House will be delighted to see His Majesty the King returning to his public duties and looking so well, and we all wish him and the Princess of Wales the best in their continued recovery. I'd also like to welcome the member for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich to his place on these benches.
It's a defection from the Tories to Labour.
Mr. Speaker, he's concluded that if you care about the future of our country and our NHS, then it's time for change. It's time for this changed Labour Party. And as of today, he's our newest Labour MP. But I'm sure he won't mind me saying that I hope he loses that title on Friday. Mr. Speaker, when a lifelong Tory and doctor says that the only cure for the NHS is a Labour government, isn't it the time the Prime Minister admits he has utterly failed?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to actually see the honourable gentleman from Central Suffolk in the House today.
Oh, little dig there, because he didn't spend enough time coming into Parliament. Although his local people said he spent too much time in Parliament.
That's because he recently pointed out that residents of his local Labour council are, and I quote in his words, charged much more in council tax, but in return receive lower quality services. Now, he's been wrong about some things recently, but on that point, he's absolutely right. And this week, people everywhere should vote Conservative.
What, for less public services? Less funding from central government?
With all that nonsense, but he locks himself away in Downing Street bunker, moaning that people aren't grateful enough to him. The reality is Tory MPs are following Tory voters in concluding that only the Labour Party can deliver the change that the country needs. And I say to those Tory voters, if they believe in a better Britain, then they're safe with this changed Labour Party, and it's for them. Mr. Speaker.
Not a question,
Mr.
but whatever.
Speaker, in the 2 weeks since we last met at this dispatch box, has the Prime Minister managed to find the money for his completely unfunded £46 billion promise to scrap national insurance?
Mr. Speaker, of course, we addressed that a few weeks ago, and I'm happy to address it again. But I know that economics is not his strong point, but he might do well. He might do well, actually, to listen to a shadow education secretary who just this morning said, no, that's not how it works, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, the IFS have also said the link between national insurance and public services funding is illusory, just like Labour's economic plans, Mr. Speaker. But it's crystal clear. What? There's one party that's going to deliver tax cuts for working Britain, and it's the Conservative Party.
Okay.
But that was a long ramble.
Whoever's banging the furniture will have to pay for your damages. Can we have less of it? We are not at the sixth form now. Come on,
Are you sure?
Well, that was a long rambling non-answer to the question, which was, has he found the money to fund his £46 billion promise to abolish national insurance?
Gary, me too,
and
mate.
Whenever he's asked about the date of the election or people's pensions, he acts as if answering straightforward questions is somehow beneath him. But pensioners and those who are planning their retirement deserve better than his contempt for their questions. Because if £46 billion were cut from its funding, the value of the state pension would almost halve. Yep. So I don't apologise for asking him again.
Order. Mr. Gullis, you've got the next question you're not going to reach. You've got a 10-minute rule bill. I'd be quiet for a while if I were you. Prime Minister. Sorry, Leader of the Opposition.
So I don't
Gullis has got a 10-minute, but
he's
got to shut up now for 10 minutes.
Whether he will finally rule out cutting their state pension to fulfil the enormous black hole in his spending plans.
Mr. Speaker, of course
Gullis
we can
banging
rule
the
that
furniture.
out. The honourable gentleman should stop scaremongering, because
scaremongering is it?
It's thanks to the triple lock that we've increased pensions by £3,700 since 2010.
That's some bullshit
they will
statistics.
rise in each and every year of the next Parliament. But it's Labour that always hits pensioners hard. It's his mentors, Blair and Brown, that broke their promises, raised pension taxes by £118 billion, and delivered an insulting 75p rise in the state pension. As one former Labour advisor just said, Brown destroyed our pension system. They did it before, they'll do it again. Labour always betray our pensioners.
Labour will be worse.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear he can't answer the question where he's going to find this £46 billion. No, he said,
get these off your bingo card.
Luckily for him, that's where he said it's not coming from. It's not said where it's coming from. Luckily for him, one of his peers, Lord Frost, yes, him again, does. He says to solve the Tory spending plans, the state pension age should be raised to 75. Now, understandably, that will cause some alarm. So will the Prime Minister rule out forcing people to delay their retirement by years and years in order to fulfil his £46 billion black hole?
Mr. Speaker,
go on,
I've
fill your
answered
black
this
hole.
multiple times to the Honourable General. I'm happy to say again, this is the party that has delivered and protected the triple lock. But I know, Mr. Speaker, ultimately he's not worried about any of this, because we all remember that he's got his very own personal pension plan. We all remember it, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, it comes with its very own special law.
What's this got to do with anything?
The pension increase scheme for Keir Starmer QC. It's literally one law for him and another one for everyone else.
Oh, God. Really?
He wants to abolish national insurance. It'll cost £46 billion, and he won't tell us where the money is coming from. We're no closer to an answer. I'm going to persevere because last year the Prime Minister was apparently drawing up plans to remove the winter fuel allowance from pensioners. His Paymaster General went a step further. He said these are the sorts of things that we need to look at.
Yeah.
So will he now rule out taking pensioners' winter fuel payments off them to help fund his £46 billion black hole?
Yeah, tell us about your black hole.
Speaker, it was this government that just this winter provided double the winter fuel payment to support pensioners. But what is crystal clear, Mr. Speaker, is that we believe that the double taxation on work is unfair, Mr. Speaker.
Double taxation on work.
Hard work should be rewarded.
So you're going to bring in a wealth tax.
We're cutting taxes by £900 for everyone in work. But in contrast, Mr. Speaker, it's Labour's newest tax advisor who thinks pensioners should be taxed more. That's his words, Mr. Speaker. This advisor calls them codgers. He thinks that supporting them is a disgrace, and he believes that their free TV licences are ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. It's Labour who hit pensioners with tax after tax, and they would do it all over again.
We're paying the highest tax in history in this country under the Tories.
That his MPs are following Tory voters in queuing up to dump his party. And even the mayors that he's apparently pinning his political survival on don't want to be seen anywhere near him.
Yeah.
Because until he starts setting out how he's paying for his fantasy economics, he's got a completely unfunded £46 billion promise that puts people's retirement at risk. How does it feel to be one day out from elections with the message, vote Tory, risk your pension?
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow voters will have a choice, and it will be a choice. It will be a choice between mayors like Andy Street and Ben Houchen who are delivering, or mayors like Sadiq Khan who just simply virtue signal, Mr. Speaker. It's higher taxes, more crime and ULEZ with Labour, or it's lower taxes and better services with the Conservatives. That's the choice. From West Midlands to Teesside to London, there is only one choice. Vote Conservative.
Performative bollocks.
Mr. Speaker, we
the guy next to him was like,
is working, and we've now deported our first illegal migrants.
God,
but
gullus.
Unsurprisingly, Labour
Piss
just
off.
don't care. The Shadow Home Secretary is busy posing for pics, encouraging more boats to come over. The leader of the Labour Party said he would cancel the Rwanda flights. He took
this guy's privately educated, by the way.
Stopping us deporting illegal foreign national offenders who committed crimes like murder.
Do a deal with the EU,
surrendering our borders to 100,000 legal migrants. Isn't it right, Prime Minister, that only the Conservatives will stop the boats and cut legal migration?
What a lunatic. What an absolute lunatic.
It's absolutely right, Mr. Speaker.
Absolutely. Got to be out on his ear in the coming election.
Legal migration, the latest figures show down by 24%. Student dependence down by 80%. But we all know Labour's big idea. It's to scrap the Rwanda plan, even when it's operational, Mr. Speaker. But as one senior Labour advisor said to Andrew Marr just yesterday, we can't just come in, tear it up and have nothing to put in its place. I'm sorry to break it to them, but that's exactly their policy.
No, their policy is to have safe routes.
All Labour would do is stop the planes.
Yes, we will stop the planes because it's a stupid idea and it won't work.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Armed Forces Minister was neither able to confirm nor deny that UK troops may soon be deployed on the ground in the Middle East. Now, the public watching will be hoping that members of this House do not have a short memory when it comes to the potential deployment and involvement of our military in the Middle East. So can I ask the Prime Minister to provide some much-needed clarity? Is he giving active consideration to the deployment of UK forces in the Middle East, yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, you wouldn't expect me to get into any operational planning details, but what I will say is we are absolutely committed to supporting international efforts to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza, which is something I think the whole House would support by land, sea and air. We've obviously tripled our aid commitment.
Supplying the Israelis with weapons
the US, Cyprus,
at the same time.
Partners, we're setting up a new temporary pier off the coast of Gaza to get aid in as securely and quickly as possible.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, let's all be in no doubt. Aid is required in Gaza, and it is required because when people are not being bombed, they are starving to death. The solution to that is a ceasefire and the opening of safe ground air routes, not the involvement on the ground of UK military personnel. These are dramatic and potentially dangerous developments. So will the Prime Minister confirm to the House today that before he makes a decision, all members will be afforded a vote?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to apologise for our armed forces playing a leading role in supporting international efforts to get more aid in. And indeed, we are sending Royal Navy support ship, RFA Cardigan Bay, to the region to support that effort. But when he talks about this conflict, the fastest way to end this conflict is to ensure that we have a hostage deal that gets hostages out, aid in, and for there to be a sustainable pause in the fighting. And it seems clear that there now is a workable offer on the table. So I hope he joins with me in encouraging all parties, including Hamas, to accept that deal so we can move towards a sustainable solution.
Sir Bill Wigan. My right honourable friend's decision to cancel HS2 led to £207 million for Herefordshire's potholes and transport infrastructure. Hereford Hospital has a new wards, more beds and a new diagnostic centre on the way. £35 million has been allocated to the River Wye recovery plan.
I thought it was down south.
Inflation is down, the Rwanda bill has been passed, and defence spending is increasing. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that if he carries on like this, he's going to win the next election?
No.
Highlighting the work that the government's doing, whether that is increasing our defence spending to keep us safe, securing our borders with
Rwanda
God. Cutting taxes.
Is he worried that he might win the next election? No, not worried about that at all, mate.
And I'm also pleased that locally in Herefordshire,
we are 270 million for some potholes
and improving local health services. It shows crystal clear that it's the Conservative government that has a plan and is delivering a brighter future for our country.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In February, his Foreign Secretary said it would be difficult for a ground offensive on Rafah to avoid harming civilians and destroying homes. Just yesterday, his Deputy Foreign Secretary admitted he was struggling to see how such an attack could be compliant with international humanitarian law. All the signs are that Netanyahu is about to defy the international community. An attack on the 1.5 million Palestinians sheltering in Rafah is imminent. If that attack begins, will that be the moment when the Prime Minister finally finds the moral backbone to ban arms exports to Israel? And if not, how much more suffering has to happen before he acts to prevent further UK complicity in crimes against humanity?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what the Honourable Lady did not acknowledge at all is that Israel suffered an appalling terrorist attack that kills hundreds of its citizens, and it does have the right to defend itself. Now, of course, as I've been crystal clear, we want to see humanitarian law respected and adhered to by all parties. Too many civilians have been killed, and we do want to see Israel take greater care to avoid harming civilians. I've made these points repeatedly to Prime Minister Netanyahu, specifically about the impact of any military incursion into Rafah, and we continue to say to the Israelis at all levels that we want to see more aid going in and bring about a hostage deal so we can move towards a sustainable ceasefire.
Andrew Slew.
The 60% increase in funding for special educational needs and disabilities is extremely welcome, but the challenges around the recruitment of community paediatricians mean that some children in Leighton Buzzard, Dunstable and Houghton Regis are waiting too long for an assessment. What can the NHS do to attract more of the 39,000 additional doctors recruited under this government into community paediatrics as a specialty, which is incredibly rewarding and important.
Yeah. Oh. He went to Eton College,
right,
by the way.
He joins me in
He's
welcoming the significant action that we've taken already to improve children's health, whether that's reducing sugar in children's foods, but the £600 million we've also invested to improve the quality of sport and physical activity in schools. The NHS has established a special group to ensure that the recovery of paediatric services keeps pace with that of adult elective care too. And I know that he will be pleased that the NHS long-term workforce plan that we have fully backed doubles the number of medical school places in England, increases specialty training places, and that will increase the size of the pool from which community paediatricians can be drawn in the future.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you. I know that you, Mr Speaker, want to join me in sending condolences to the friends, family and colleagues of our former colleague Lord Andrew Stunnell, who served with exceptional diligence and grace as MP for Hazel Grove in this House and who passed away very suddenly on Monday. Mr Speaker, when the BBC ends long-wave radio transmission next year, they will also end access to electricity tariffs like total heating with total control, relied on by almost 1 million households across the United Kingdom. Switching to smart meters is not going to fix this for most people, not least because the rollout programme is so far behind. So will the Prime Minister or possibly His Secretary of State for Energy get the energy companies, the regulator and the customer groups together so that we can stop passing the blame around and find a solution that does not yet again leave people in the Highlands and Islands behind and out in the cold?
Good point.
Well, Mr Speaker, I understand that an agreement has now been reached to ensure that radio teleswitching services will continue until June of next year, and Ofgem are also engaging with energy suppliers on their plans to support consumers through the transition. Whilst households that are currently covered by the service shouldn't be disadvantaged by the switch off, it's energy suppliers who are best placed to advise on tariffs for those who have been switched to a smart meter. However, I will make sure that the Right Honourable Gentleman does get a meeting with the relevant minister to ensure that his constituents are not left behind during the transition.
Peter Aldis.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The East of England is playing a lead role in delivering the UK's energy security, and without our contribution, the country will not be able to successfully transition to a renewable energy supply system. In recent months, our coast has taken a battering, and projects like the Lowestoft Flood Defence Scheme have been postponed. Will my right honourable friend ensure that government departments are fully coordinated so as to provide the region with good supporting infrastructure?
From Eton to Harrow. This guy went to Harrow.
And every opportunity for local people to take up exciting new jobs.
Mr Speaker, we are levelling up across the United Kingdom and investing in places that need it most, including, as my honourable friend rightly highlights, our coastal communities. Almost £1 billion of levelling up funding has been allocated to the East of England, including £75 million for coastal places. I know that he welcomes the town deal for Lowestoft in particular, but I will ensure that my honourable friend gets a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss how we can further support his region, its role in our energy security, but particular its coastal communities.
Deirdre Brown.
Mr Speaker, the Greenpeace group Unearthed found 36 supposed grassroots campaign groups which were actually administered by Conservative staff and activists and were forums for vile racism, anti-Semitism and Islamophobic attacks on Sadiq Khan. Now, one hears of other such coordinated efforts around anti-20 mile/hour zones in Wales. Can the Prime Minister shed some light on these shady groups spreading abuse, their funding, their links to his party, and whether he is aware of similar operations existing elsewhere in the UK? If he won't, will he at least commit today to investigate and take action to tackle the sources of this grubby gutter politics?
I like that. Good question.
Mr Speaker, I'm not aware about the topic that the Honourable Lady raises, but I'm not going to make any apology for Conservatives pointing out the record of whether it's the SNP in Scotland or the Labour government in Wales, because that's exactly what democratic process is about. She might not like it when we highlight their record, but we will keep doing so that we can deliver for people across the United Kingdom.
Jesus, I think this is an all-time delivering record.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome our government's commitments to boosting defence spending and supporting Ukraine, made possible by this Conservative Prime Minister's international leadership and sound management of the economy. My constituents have been doing us proud supporting Ukraine, like the Pot Place Garden Centre delivering ambulances, medical equipment and supplies, and Steve Hodgson providing vital aid. Would the Prime Minister join me in paying tribute to my constituents and people up and down the land for their support for Ukraine, and reaffirm that we will continue to stand with Ukraine for the sake of freedom, democracy and global security?
I join my honourable friend in thanking people up and down the country, including the fantastic work of his constituents, in supporting the Ukrainian community in the face of Putin's illegal invasion. We remain steadfast in support of Ukraine, and in total, since the war began, we've pledged over £12 billion of aid to Ukraine. Last week, we announced an additional £500 million of funding, which will be used to deliver much-needed ammunition, air defence and engineering support and drones. But more importantly, and President Zelensky welcomed this, we are able to now say that we'll continue with this level of support for as long as it takes because of the historic increase in our defence spending. And it's crystal clear that on this side of the House, we can say that our support to Ukraine will never waver.
Margaret Bremer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 1969, my constituent Georgina Jacobs gave birth to a baby boy who she named Robert. Sadly, Robert was born asleep, and in those days the hospitals would ask the father to collect the baby's body, take it to the cemetery and leave it there for burial. For 53 years, Georgina didn't know exactly where Robert was buried. When she eventually found him, she shared her story on social media, and other mothers who'd been through the same experience got in touch. Since then, Georgina has located over 60 babies on behalf of grieving parents and has deservedly been presented with the Wirral Award for her achievements. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Georgina on her award and on having brought comfort to so many parents and families? And will he, on behalf of all previous governments, apologise for this former practice, which left grieving parents with nowhere to visit their buried children?
Well, can I thank and commend the Honourable Lady for raising this case and just pay tribute to Georgina for what she is doing. I often say that one of the most incredible things about doing this job is meeting people like Georgina who have suffered tragedy in their lives, but then use that to campaign and inspire and bring about a better life for everyone else. She's a prime example of that. She deserves nothing but our praise and admiration, and I'm so pleased that she's brought comfort to so many other people too.
Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since I was elected in 2010, Rugby's seen employment grow by nearly 6,000, with 10% more of my constituents in work, much of which has been driven by investment from advanced manufacturing in places such as Anstey Park, where we've got the Manufacturing Technology Centre, which the Prime Minister visited, High Temperature Research Centre, Rolls-Royce, Parker Meggitt, Fanuc and the London Electric Vehicle Company. Given that every Labour government has left office with unemployment higher than when they came in, can the Prime Minister see any reason why anybody would want to put this fantastic progress at risk?
I was pleased to see for myself on a recent visit that my honourable friend is a great champion for his constituents in Rugby, and I was very pleased to see the thriving local technology and manufacturing industry, which will help us deliver on our ambitions to make the UK a science and technology superpower. And he's right that we do have a record with 1 million fewer workless households, unemployment near record lows, and he's also right that we need to stick to that plan, because that's how we'll deliver the long-term change that our country needs,
he said it again.
And deliver a brighter future
he
for
said it
families
twice.
up and down the country,
He said it twice.
including in his constituency.
My God.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Burning a hole in your bingo
needs
card here.
called out, and everyone in this House will recall the former Irish Prime Minister in Brussels with a photograph of a bombed customs post, lamenting that any border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland was unworkable, it was in breach of the Belfast Agreement and could result in such troubles again. The hypocrisy of the Irish government from such a position has not been lost, with the Irish police now tasked to patrol control the border, protect from the unsubstantiated, unfounded 80% figure of asylum seekers who supposedly make their way to the Republic of Ireland from the UK via Northern Ireland, when actually the reverse is true. Will the Prime Minister challenge and call out these actions and confirm what representations he has made to the Irish Prime Minister and the Justice Minister to respect the integrity of our UK and border?
Well, the House will be aware that we have made commitments to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland, and the Honourable Lady makes a very important point that the Irish Government must uphold its promises too. We can't have cherry-picking of important international agreements, and so the Secretary of State, is seeking urgent clarification that there will be no disruption or police checkpoints at or near the border, and I can confirm that the United Kingdom has no legal obligation to accept returns of illegal migrants from Ireland. Now, it's no surprise that our robust approach to illegal migration is providing a deterrent, but the answer is not sending police to villages in Donegal. It's to work with us in partnership to strengthen our external borders all around the common travel area that we share.
Mr. Speaker, I was the Lord Commissioner that signed the Right Honourable Gentleman's special pension into law.
You are special.
He owes me one. But the Prime Minister is right. Labour's 75p was an insult to pensioners. Yet last year, our triple lock afforded pensioners the highest increase in 30 years.
This guy's bonkers.
The Prime Minister is going to continue to deliver for dignity in retirement.
Oh my God, he said the words.
Well, my right honourable friend is absolutely right that we will provide dignity to all those in retirement. That's why we introduced the triple lock.
It's like a children's television presenter who's just stumbled drunk into the House of Commons.
I'm also proud of our record to bring 200,000 pensioners out
Bedford
of poverty.
School he went to.
And I can also say, as I've said previously, that the state pension will increase in each and every year of the next Parliament. And as he reminds us about the 75p increase, unlike Labour, pensioners in this country can trust the Conservatives.
What other characters are going to be talking
in
today?
only one of the 194 local authority areas in
No,
England
aluminium, he's like that
NHS
normally.
ambulances meeting the national response time target
That's just normal
for responding
Desmond
to
Swain.
potential heart and stroke victims. Does the Prime Minister know which one it is?
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to ambulance waiting times in A&E, of course there's more work to do, but the place where they are the worst in the country is in Labour on Wales, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to our plan, we've seen an improvement in A&E and ambulance times. This winter over last winter, we have 800 more
over the
ambulances
winter
on the road,
before when you were in
faster
office.
discharge out of our emergency care centres, and 10,000
He keeps doing this.
virtual
He
ward
keeps
beds.
going. We're doing better than we were a year ago
As I said, there is
when
more to
they were
do,
in
but
office.
the contrast to Labour on Wales is crystal clear. It's the worst A&E performance anywhere in Great Britain.
Just saying Labour will be worse.
Speaker, for
I'm sure
6
Labour's
months,
central
thousands
government
of
will give more money.
my constituents have lived with foul, polluted air from the Withyhedge landfill site. The company is owned by somebody with previous convictions for environmental crimes and who a few months ago gave £200,000 to help Vaughan Gething become First Minister of Wales, after another of his other companies was loaned £400,000 from the Development Bank of Wales, overseen by the then Economy Minister, Vaughan Gething. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that this serious matter demands an independent investigation? It's not some internal Labour Party matter, and ultimately that company needs to get out of my constituency and let people in Pembrokeshire have their quality of life back.
I'm sure it's really important that everyone drives
my
fast,
honourable
though.
friend brings up an incredibly important issue, and I know that people in Wales are concerned about the relationship that he mentions, and I also agree with him on the need for transparency and an investigation regarding the Welsh Labour leader, because it's very clear that the situation is not at all transparent, and answers are needed.
Answers. It's got to be really posh to put an R in answers.
Mr. Speaker, it's been revealed by the Observer newspaper that the Conservative candidate for the Mayor of London is actually a member of the 6 Facebook groups which was mentioned by the member for Edinburgh North. And they are full of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism and the most disgraceful incitement to damaging property. And the worst bit, for those of us who were in the House when our members of Parliament were taken, death threats to the current Mayor of London, Mr Khan.
Yeah.
Will he close down these Facebooks which have been begun by Conservative members of staff, and will he investigate the role of the current candidate and her membership of those disgraceful, racist Facebooks?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the election tomorrow will be fought on the substance of the issues that London has faced, and the Labour record is crystal clear. House building in London has collapsed. Knife crime
How are they
is
supposed to
rising.
pay for houses when you don't
Mayoral
give them any
taxes are
money?
up 70%, and
Your
drivers
taxes
have been
are
hit
up.
with ULEZ charges, and the Labour mayor just
Hardly
simply
anyone
panders
pays ULEZ.
to unions and has decimated London's nighttime economy.
Oh, okay,
That's
yeah.
his record. That's
Pandering
how he'll
to
be judged.
unions.
And people across London know that they will be safer.
The nighttime economy's gone because no one's got any money.
Better services.
No one's got any money to frickin' spend. You've taken it all, you disgusting millionaire scum.
Staffordshire Day, where we celebrate all the brilliant things about the county of Staffordshire. So would my right honourable friend join me in paying tribute to our brilliant Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, Ben Adams, and encourage the people of Staffordshire to vote for Ben tomorrow to make sure we keep Staffordshire one of the safest places to live, work and visit?
It's not.
Well, I wish everyone a happy Staffordshire Day. And she mentions the PCC elections, and I think it's right that she does, because under this Conservative and previous governments, we've cut crime by over 50%, delivered
No, you
20,000
haven't.
more police
You
officers.
absolute
But people
lie.
with a Labour police
That is
and
an
crime
absolute
commissioner
lie.
Are more likely to be victims of burglary, twice as likely to be victims of robbery.
just lying.
And as I said,
This is
last
just
year,
bullshit
knife crime in
statistics.
London went up by 20%. The facts simply speak for themselves.
He is
Vote
just
Conservative
lying.
for
He's
safer
just talking
streets.
through his absolute arse. The only reason why the crime rate has gone down is because the Tories stopped classifying certain crimes as crimes, including fraud.
Each Prime Minister's questions. We'll let the front benches clear.
Okay, so that's the end of it anyway, so doesn't really matter that I cut in there. But yeah, that's this week's Prime Minister's questions done and dusted. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as much fun as last week when Angela Rayner took on Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, who doesn't seem to have a clue. He seems to have wandered in. Although Desmond Swayne, I'll repeat what I said in case it was drowned out by the talk in the chamber. Desmond Swayne does seem like a children's television presenter who's just stumbled into the House of Commons drunk off his face. More life's left me. I'm going to tell a joke now. It was painful. That was pretty painful. And also allowing Jonathan Gullis to ask a question as well, which wasn't so much of a question as a kind of just a weird, ranty, bizarre soapbox thing that you might expect to see on a street corner. Just someone shouting at the clouds, shaking their fists, maybe, at the clouds. And some people actually do in this country. Like, there are people who literally shake their fists at clouds because they think it's caused by chemtrails, which aren't actually a thing. It's just vapor. It's just water vapor from the planes, because the planes are a bit warmer than the rest of the air, you know, up there, because obviously it's got engines which create a lot of heat and they agitate the air, and that makes steam. Does that make that sense to people? I mean, it doesn't have to be 100 degrees for steam to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, otherwise puddles would never evaporate. But there are people out there now who are absolutely convinced that the world is flat. So there's nothing down for them. And we shouldn't be pandering to them. We shouldn't be pandering to idiots. We've got to stop arranging the needs of the village around the wants, the desires, the lunacy of the village idiot, which is what we do at the moment. I'll just pop into the chat. Hey to Frank there, and Gary and Samantha. Also got Vendetta in there. Countdown to Power saying, is that 3 Tories on the run? I thought it was supposed to be PMQs, not Tories ask their own boss nice questions. No, we didn't have 3 Tories on in a run. They go back and forth. So it should be opposition questions and then, you know, opposition bench questions and then over to the Tories. I don't think they did 3 in a row. Not that I noticed. Seems very one-sided this week with Tories getting 90% of the questions. The Tories get 1 and then the opposition benches get 1. So, or in the case of the leader of the opposition, they get 5, and then the leader of the secondary party in the opposition gets 2. Michael Warner, Grim, what time are you leaving? Oh, it's talking to Grim Fandango. Hello. Prime Minister's evasions. That's a good way of putting it. Aluminium tech. We've also got Leanne saying they created an amazing imaginative world, cosplay and psychosis. Yeah. I can't agree more. With the London mayor decided by first past the post, I wonder if the results would be declared earlier than before. Yeah, actually, the London mayoral elections traditionally have not been announced till the weekend. So, yeah, this could be a case of them coming in on the night since it is first past the post, which I just massively disagree with. It was always first past the post. The difference was you used to have ranked voting or single transferable voting where you voted 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on who you wanted. And if your first ranked candidate didn't get the round to the last round, didn't get through to the last round, whoever you voted second or maybe third would get through. So you could vote for Count Binface first, and then you could vote for Sadiq Khan second. You can't do that this time, which is just. Tories have to suck the fun out of everything, don't they? Anyway, I don't know if you noticed, but Lawrence Fox has been on the attack this week because he's bought the front covers of all the local newspapers in London saying don't vote for anyone. Vote for none of the above. The parallels with him and Brewster's Millions can't be denied. He does look like he's trying to lose all his money and sully his family's name in one fell swoop, and sully the name of Harrow, the elite school that he went to, he attended. That's where you go if your parents are millionaires. And he got expelled. He got expelled from Harrow because he's a scumbag. He thinks the rules don't apply to him. There was an interesting thing this morning, and this has nothing to do with PMQs, but there was an interesting thing this morning that got mentioned on James O'Brien's show on LBC, where he talked about black people getting stopped and searched by the police more than white people, and the chief of the Met, Mark Riley, was defending this, and the point was made that it's interesting that the police stopping and searching people is fine for people as long as it doesn't happen to them. And as soon as it did, i.e. during COVID, that's when they started to freak the F out. How dare you ask me questions of why I'm here? How dare you ask me to justify my innocence? How dare you? I'm a white middle-class middle-aged male. And and you look at someone like Lawrence Fox, but not for too long because he is tremendously ugly. And you see that they hate more than anything being beholden to the same rules, norms, conventions, and laws that the rest of us are. They really do see us as plebs, as a whole different subspecies of human to them. They are born to rule this whole elite class in the UK, and we need to keep pointing this out. And until something is done about it, my suggestion is to close down all the private schools. I think in one fell swoop, you would change an entire generation's outlook, because the people that they hang around with won't be fellow millionaires or children of millionaires who will go on to be millionaires. And at the moment, while Humza Yousaf is still leader of the SNP, every single leader of every single major political party in the UK, apart from Plaid Cymru, went to private school. And you look at that, and then you see things like Sagita Maestra has been taken off LBC. We haven't heard why in particular. They say, their contract's come to an end. I think there's more to it than that, but I don't know, so I couldn't possibly comment. But Vanessa Feltz, who went to Haberdasher Asks Girls' School, a middle-aged white woman, replacing a state-educated Afro-Indian heritage woman who was left-wing, and obviously she's been replaced with this right-wing private school white person, another one, an LBC. So I'll have to run through my roster of LBC presenters, but I think that it might be over 60% privately educated now, which is beyond disgraceful. I mean, even Oxford University isn't as elitist as LBC when it comes to percentages of students there that come from state school backgrounds. When we talk about deprived, children who come from deprived backgrounds, forget about it. You won't meet many of them. You won't see You won't see many of them on TV or in Parliament. It doesn't happen. When it does, it's very few and far between. And just look at how the media go after the likes of Angela Rayner, Gary Lineker, Carol Vorderman. They go after them with a vengeance, because it's not just that these people are speaking truth to power. It's in the minds of the ruling classes of this country that they have ideas above their station, darling. Get back in your box. Get back in your box, pleb. That's what I hear whenever I hear some privately educated twonk coming out with absolute garbage in their weekly column in the Mail or the Sun or the Telegraph or the Express or any of those gutter newspapers, written by absolute scumbags and owned by absolute scumbags who just want to spread disinformation and misinformation amongst their readership, to get people into a point where they don't know what to think anymore, because so much information is coming at them so fast from all these different places, and they don't know who to trust, and they end up trusting no one. And that feeds into what the Tories want to put out there more than anything, which is, we're all the same, Matt Hancock presiding over 18,000 deaths in care homes, in his bullshit ring of protection that he said he put around care homes. That's the equivalent. That is absolutely the equivalent of Keir Starmer having a beer. The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson having a loan facilitated for an £800,000 loan facilitated by a guy who will go on to be the chairman of the BBC, Richard Sharp. That's exactly the same, if you think about it, as in the early days of her relationship, Angela Rayner spending time in two different houses, but being registered in one of them, which actually quite a few of us do when we have somewhere where, we want all our bank balances to go to, or bank accounts and things, because it is a lot of hassle to move them when you don't have to. But no, that's equal to the Tories. They want that idea. And what Labour need to avoid more than anything else, and especially in light of Keir Starmer's comments yesterday, when he was tackled about his stance on trans people and their rights, we need Labour not to fall into this trap of people being able to point at them and saying, I told you they were just as bad as the Tories. And so a little bit of support for minority groups, whether that is Jewish people, Muslim people, trans people, gay people, lesbians, bisexual people, queer, intersex, asexual, doesn't matter. Like, whatever minorities are out there, Labour should be always making the point time and time again that they have Labour's love and support, and they will want to help that community out in any way they possibly can, so long as it's not to the detriment of any other minority, put it that way. That's a nice way of putting it. But to fall into these culture war traps that the Tories are setting them is mind-blowingly frustrating. We talked about this last night on Geoscope with Ollie. Anyway, listen, I'm going to be hopefully having a chat with Femi later this week. I don't know if we'll do the show today, but it might be a pre-record. It might be a live show. We might decide to do a live show. So if we do, I'll put a thing out on the Labour Social post on the channel here to say what time we'll be doing that. So please tune in for a special edition of The Agenda, where we are going to be talking about the fact that Femi thinks that it's a good idea that we have a hung election. In his ideal result of the next general election would be a hung election. That would be probably the second worst result after the Tories winning for me. And we'll explain why. We'll go through it and our standpoints on that. So please look out for that. It should be quite spicy. It should be quite fun and interesting. I'm just going to go through a few of your comments before I go, before I sling my hook. LMQs, line minister's questions. I like that from Freckle Puny. We've got Frank saying bye. 7 Deputy saying, just like I said a minute ago, no bearing on reality and truth. You're absolutely right. Karen says, why is Sunak allowed to lie like that without being challenged? It's just the way that Parliament's run. Like, even if they're standing up and just telling an absolute lie, they can't be pulled up on it at the time, which is why I think it's important that we have sort of like a live fact checker, me, going, that's bollocks, and this is why he's pulling out results out of his arse, saying things like, the two ones that stuck out for me in that one were the one about unemployment always being higher under Labour. No, when Labour got in 1997, unemployment was higher than it was in 2010 when they left. And also, unemployment was way, way down in 2008. The only reason why there was a jump up to 2010 was because of the global credit crunch, the global downturn, economic downturn caused by greedy bankers being really greedy and getting away with it and being bailed out by our governments around the world. Sorry, did I say governments? I meant taxpayers. I meant you and me. We bailed out those bankers so they can just continue, I don't know, buying a massive yacht that they use for a few days each year, but costs millions to house, run, keep clean, have a staff on board. Anyway, so there was that, and the other absolutely outrageous lie that he came out with was that the Tories have halved crime. No, they haven't. In fact, the last Labour government really drove down crime because they were tough on crime, but also tough on the causes of crime. And that wasn't just rhetoric. It meant alleviating children from poverty, because poverty, not race, not religion, nothing else, poverty is the biggest driver of crime here and around the world. That's why in countries where people are poor, you're more likely to be a victim of a crime. It's because people have got no hope. They're like, oh, well, I might end up in jail, but being like this is worse, and they will commit crimes in order to supplement their income, which at the moment, from this Tory government, is bugger all. Even if you're working every hour of the day looking after a family member, they don't care. They'll be like, no, we're going to cut that. We're going to cut your carer's allowance. We're going to cut, if you're ill and you can't look after yourself, we're going to cut your PIP because we're just evil like that. That'll get you back to work. Carrot and stick, but only without the carrot. And I think it's just disgusting. But yeah, they lied about that and said, oh yeah, we got it down 50%. And then he said about bringing in officers, police officers, 20,000 police officers. They got rid of 20,000 police officers. And then they got 20,000 new ones who weren't as experienced and weren't vetted properly. And now the Met and other police forces around the country are absolutely swarming with scumbags like Wayne Couzens who, are committing these horrific criminal acts, or they're in their WhatsApp groups, laughing at each other, laughing to each other about the horrible things that have happened in that they've seen in the course of their job. I mean, just if you think about the hours of experience that has been thrown down the drain by the Tories by pushing 20,000 experienced police officers out of the force, it's millions. It's literally millions of hours of experience that just been thrown away for no reason. And they're like, oh yes, and crime is down. But at the same time, it's like Schrodinger's crime. Crime's up in the capital, and that's all Sadiq Khan's fault. But crime's down overall. It's like, no, it's not. The other thing that they did, which I mentioned when we were doing the live stream, live commentary, is that they took fraud off the list of crimes. About 2017, was it? When was it? Someone look it up. I don't know. They took fraud off the list. Well, that's not a crime. It's not a real crime. Anyway, Michael Bonner, no Graham, it was for you. What time tomorrow evening for your stream? 10 o'clock. We're going to start at 10 tomorrow, and hopefully we'll run into the early hours. We'll see how long it lasts. I might fall asleep. That'll be fun. You can watch me sleep. We'll see. Lots of coffee, maybe a couple of beers. Siskin Edge says, I remember when I was a teenager, being bisexual was censored and people had weird and creepy ideas of what I was. It's happening again for our trans bros and sisters. Yes. Yeah. And being bisexual as well, you get kickback from, well, you used to, I mean, probably don't still now, but you used to get kickback from the gay community as well. You haven't made up your mind. Why don't you make up your mind? Oh, so you'll have sex with anything then? It's like, no. What? Why? How'd you put those two things together? So it's kind of like you felt like you were being sort of battered by both sides. But then that's what a lot of people in the trans community are feeling now when you have literally the founder of frickin' Stonewall saying, oh yeah, trans people don't deserve rights because reasons. my heart goes out to the trans community. They've gone from looking like it was going to be just accepted that people were different and they led that lives differently, and then everyone should have bodily autonomy and be able to do what they want with themselves. And then it's morphed in the last 10 years into this raging hate group across the left and right of politics. The left people being quite confused over what is, feminism. People go, what is a woman? No, what is feminism? If you think feminism is behaving like a Nazi towards trans people, then you're not a feminist, bro, or sis, I guess. It baffles me. It baffles me that so many people have picked up on this and gone, this is it. This is the hill that I want to die on. And it's got to such a point now where J.K. Rowling is just tweeting out the most horrific transphobic stuff. She's calling trans women, calling them men. And then you've got Graham Linehan, who's gone so far down this route, this rabbit hole, that he's lost his wife, he's lost access to his kids, his wife's left him because of his toxic beliefs. And now he's on Twitter calling Russell T Davies, the creator of Queer as Folk, the guy who brought Doctor Who back from the dead, calling him a groomer, effectively calling him a paedophile. For what? For being gay. Not for being trans. For being gay. That's where we've got now. All presided over by Space Karen himself. What's his name? Elon Musk. Going, yeah, this is fine. It's all just a freedom of ideas. It's a forum. Everyone can say what they like, no matter how hurtful, no matter how many people it drives into the depths of depression. It's a bloody disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And there's people out there who really need to take a good, long, hard look at themselves and go, is this the person I want to be? The people on the right, can't do anything about them. They're not nice people. But the people who think they are nice, the people who think they are on the side of the angels, to be sitting there in the trenches with the helmet on going, are we the baddies? Yeah, you are at the moment. Because you're demonizing a minority. And erasing another minority. I'm saying you're demonizing trans women, and at the same time erasing trans men as if they don't exist. And it's just this whole setup is heartbreaking, and as it is manufactured by the powers that be to keep us fighting amongst ourselves, divide and rule, because that's the way. They've run it for centuries, and they're not going to stop anytime soon unless we stop them. And the first thing we need to do is point this shit out, because no one's going to do that for us. Honestly, no one's going to do it for us. Even the best people on the TV, on the radio, they've got blind spots. I'm not saying that I've got all the answers myself. I'm saying that as a community, as people coming together, I'm sure between people in the chat here, and Max and Phil and Ollie and everyone else making content and speaking truth to power from a position of not being bankrolled by big oil or by the arms industry or or even having to be beholden to the unions that might be saying, hey, let's leave the EU. That sounds like a great idea. Because what our members really want is more expensive fruit and veg. Yeah. Anyway, Franco Pina says bye all. Yeah, I should go because it's now 1 o'clock. I've been rabbiting on for 58 minutes and 6 seconds. It isn't fraud what Tories do. Yes, it is. Anyway, so thank you so much for joining us on the PMQs, Graham Hughes. Hopefully I'll be on later today. I'll probably do a video about tactical voting tomorrow. StopTheTories.vote is the website you want to be going to if you want to find out who to vote for tomorrow. And until then, we've got Phil coming, obviously, in the morning at 9:30 for Morning Brew. So until then, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.